In the year 2173, Earth stood at the edge of collapse. Centuries of environmental degradation, wars over dwindling resources, and unchecked technological progress had ravaged the planet. Desperation seeped into every corner of human civilization. Governments fell, and in their place, a unified coalition of the world's surviving powers emerged, one that sought not only to save humanity, but to push the very limits of survival. The Coalition for the Preservation of Earth, or CPE, was born from the ashes of Earth's broken nations. At the heart of this coalition was a visionary named Dr. Elena Voss. A brilliant astrobiologist and physicist, Elena had spent years studying the stars, convinced that the only hope for humanity's future lay in the cosmos. With Earth on the brink of collapse, she presented her groundbreaking proposal to the CPE, a mass exodus from Earth to the stars. She had found a way to travel beyond the solar system, using a technology that defied the known laws of physics, something the world had never imagined possible. The ship that would carry humanity into the unknown was called the Hope. Built with technology scavenged from the remnants of Earth's greatest minds, it was a gargantuan spacecraft capable of holding millions. The Hope was designed not only for survival, but also for discovery. It would carry the seeds of Earth's civilization into the stars, offering a fresh chance for humankind to thrive, if only they could reach a new world. The journey was perilous, and many doubted it could succeed. There were those who believed that humanity's fate was sealed on Earth, and that no technology could escape the doom they had created. But Dr. Voss was resolute. She had gathered a diverse crew of the best minds, soldiers, engineers, and diplomats from every corner of Earth. Together, they would face the unknown. Together, they would prove that humanity was more than the mistakes of its past. The first stage of the mission was the hardest, gathering the people. The coalition issued a global call to arms, urging citizens to sign up for the exodus. The plan was to send off the first fleet, a small group of ships carrying the most capable individuals, while Earth's remaining population would follow. Over the course of several months, cities emptied. Thousands of hopeful volunteers boarded the colossal starships that would serve as humanity's last hope. They left behind the dying planet, not knowing if they would ever return, or if Earth could even survive without them. Dr. Voss watched from the launch station as the first ships took off, one after another, breaking the atmosphere in a fiery rush. Each one carried a piece of Earth's legacy. They were the pioneers, the vanguard. Some cried at the thought of never seeing their home again, while others embraced the hope of the new world ahead. It was a moment of collective unity, a moment when humanity, desperate, fractured, and on the brink, found a reason to hope. As the final fleet of ships ascended into the night sky, the Earth below seemed to fade into the background. The atmosphere cleared, the stars beckoned, and for the first time in decades, humanity's eyes were focused on something bigger than their dying planet. The stars were now within reach, and with them came the promise of a new beginning. But the path was not without challenges. The journey through the stars was fraught with unknown dangers. There were whispers of other civilizations, ones that had long since disappeared, or ones that might not be as welcoming. The stars were vast, and the distances between them could no longer be measured in mere years or light. No one knew what awaited the human race in the endless black of space, but there was no turning back now. At the heart of the Hope, Dr. Voss stood in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The ship's engines hummed with quiet power as it made its way deeper into the galaxy. The crew had adjusted to life aboard the massive vessel, each person playing their part in this delicate and historic operation. For now, all they could do was wait, plan, and prepare for what would come next. As they passed the orbit of Pluto, they knew they had crossed a line that no human had ever crossed before. Humanity had left Earth, and there was no telling if they would ever return. The galaxy awaited. Months passed as the Hope glided silently through the vastness of space. Life aboard the colossal ship had become a rhythm, a blend of routine and uncertainty. People had begun to adapt to their new home, a floating city in the void. The once bustling halls were now quieter, as the crew and civilians settled into their new existence. A small community had formed within the ship, working tirelessly to maintain its systems, keep their spirits high, and search for a new home. But despite the growing sense of purpose, a question lingered. Was humanity truly alone in the universe? Dr. Voss stood in the observation bay, her eyes fixed on the horizon of stars. The crew had been scanning the deep void, using a vast array of sensors and telescopes to look for habitable planets. Every day, new data was transmitted back to Earth, now a distant memory. Yet, despite their best efforts, no signs of life had been detected. For a while, this was a relief, but as months stretched into years, doubt began to creep in. Were the stars truly empty? The answer came on the 462nd day of the journey. It began as an anomaly. A strange signal, unlike anything they had ever encountered, pulsed through the vastness of space. It wasn't a natural phenomenon, nor was it any of the human-made signals they had been tracking. No, this was something else entirely. The ship's AI, Orion, flagged it immediately. At first, it seemed like a faint burst of static, perhaps some sort of cosmic interference, but as they tracked its origin, it became clear it was coming from a nearby system, one that hadn't been cataloged before. "We've found something," Elena said as she stood before the holographic console in the bridge. The crew gathered around her, staring at the data as the signal grew stronger. It wasn't like anything they had ever seen. The frequency patterns were too organized, too deliberate. "This is definitely artificial," Dr. Voss murmured, her voice filled with awe. But by whom's? A team was quickly assembled, and within hours, they set a course for the source of the signal. As the ship hurtled through space, every crew member felt the weight of the unknown bearing down on them. Was this a friendly signal, an invitation to a new world? Or was it a trap, a lure placed by something far more advanced, something hostile? The journey took several weeks, and as they approached the system, the signal became clearer, almost as if it were beckoning them. The ship's sensors picked up a planet in the habitable zone, orbiting a dim red dwarf star. But there was something strange about the planet. As they neared it, an unexpected gravitational anomaly began to distort their readings. The ship's AI struggled to maintain control as the strange forces intensified. "We've got a problem," Commander Tarek, the ship's military leader, reported. "The gravity well is messing with our trajectory. We're being pulled in." "Steady, everyone," Dr. Voss said, her voice calm despite the growing tension. "Prepare for a controlled landing. We need to understand what's happening down there." With a combination of calculated skill and a bit of luck, the crew of the Hope managed to stabilize their descent. As they broke through the thick atmosphere of the planet, they saw the surface, desolate, scarred, but undeniably artificial. Structures long abandoned dotted the landscape. Towering monoliths of unknown materials stretched toward the heavens, their surfaces eroded by time. A civilization had once thrived here. But where were its people? The landing was rough, but the ship touched down safely on a flat plateau. Dr. Voss, Commander Tarek, and a small team of explorers suited up for their first excursion to the surface. As they stepped out into the barren landscape, the silence was overwhelming. The air was thick, but breathable, and the sky above them was a deep, stormy gray. The planet's twin moons loomed ominously, casting strange shadows across the desolation. The team approached one of the monoliths. Its surface was smooth and perfectly angled, with strange glyphs etched into it. No known language, no symbol that they recognized. They ran scans, hoping to gather more information, but the technology they had was limited. Everything about this place felt ancient, yet the signal they had traced here was only a few centuries old. "Something doesn't add up," Tarek muttered. "This planet is ancient, but the signal is recent." Dr. Voss's heart raced. They had stumbled upon a mystery, one that could change everything they thought they knew about the universe. A forgotten world, a civilization lost to time. And yet someone or something was still watching. The signal had led them here. But who or what had sent it? Suddenly, a deep, mechanical hum resonated through the ground. The monoliths seemed to come alive, their etched glyphs glowing faintly in response. The ship's sensors flared to life, and the crew could feel the weight of an unseen presence bearing down on them. The silence shattered as a distant, thunderous roar echoed across the surface. They weren't alone. Humanity's journey through the stars had only just begun, and already it had stumbled upon something far older, far more mysterious, and possibly more dangerous than anything they could have imagined. The first encounter had begun, and the stakes were higher than they ever thought possible. As the strange hum reverberated through the ground, the crew of the Hope stood frozen. The towering monoliths, once silent and lifeless, now pulsed with an eerie energy, their etched glyphs glowing faintly, as though reacting to their presence. The deep, mechanical roar echoed across the desolate planet, sending a chill down their spines. Every instinct told them that they were being watched, that the signal was not a mere coincidence, but a deliberate message. Dr. Elena Voss adjusted the visor of her helmet, her mind racing. She could feel the weight of the unknown bearing down on her, but she refused to let fear take hold. They had come this far. They couldn't turn back now. The planet, though barren and forsaken, held the key to something far more significant than anyone could have anticipated. And whatever it was, they needed to understand it. "Commander," Dr. Voss called, her voice steady despite the growing tension. "We need to access those monoliths. If there's any chance of finding answers, they're our best lead." Tarek nodded grimly, his hand resting on the weapon at his side. "We'll need to approach with caution. We don't know what's waiting for us down there." The team moved cautiously toward one of the monoliths, their boots crunching on the cracked, dry ground. The hum intensified, vibrating through the air, as if the very planet itself was coming to life. It wasn't just the monoliths that were reacting. The terrain around them seemed to shift subtly, as though something beneath the surface was awakening. Elena reached the base of the nearest monolith and examined the intricate glyphs. They were unlike any language she had ever seen, but there was a strange pattern to them, an order that hinted at meaning. She activated her portable scanner, which began to analyze the symbols, sending the data back to the Hope. As the readings came through, the ship's AI, Orion, began to process the patterns, attempting to make sense of the unknown script. "This is fascinating," Elena murmured, her eyes wide. "These glyphs, they're not just symbols. They're data, encoded in a way that suggests a sophisticated system of communication. We might be able to decode it." As she worked, Tarek and the rest of the team spread out, searching the surrounding area for any other clues. The sound of their footsteps was swallowed by the thick, oppressive silence, making each movement seem louder than it was. They knew they had to move quickly. The longer they lingered, the more exposed they became. Suddenly, the ground beneath them rumbled, and a deep tremor shook the planet. The monolith's glowing glyphs flashed brightly, illuminating the landscape in an otherworldly light. It wasn't a natural quake. The vibrations were too deliberate, too synchronized. "What the hell is happening?" Tarek asked, his voice tinged with urgency. He quickly drew his sidearm, scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. Before anyone could react, a massive opening appeared in the ground near the largest monolith, a fissure that tore through the planet's crust like a wound. The glowing monoliths shifted, their structures moving in ways that defied logic, as though they were alive. Out of the newly opened chasm rose something colossal, something ancient. It was a ship. The structure was enormous, far larger than any vessel the crew of the Hope had ever seen. Its design was unlike anything in their database, sleek and angular, its surface smooth and metallic, reflecting the eerie light of the monoliths. The ship appeared to have been dormant for millennia, its once great hull now covered in the dust of ages. Yet despite its age, it radiated an unmistakable energy, as though it had just awakened from a long slumber. The crew stared in stunned silence. Tarek's voice was the first to break the quiet. "Is that a ship?" "It's not just any ship," Elena said, her voice filled with awe. "This is a warship. And it's not human." The realization hit them all at once. They had stumbled upon the remains of an ancient, advanced civilization. But this was no ordinary race. From the structure of the ship to the strange technology embedded in the monoliths, it was clear that these beings had been powerful and deadly. Tarek motioned for the team to approach cautiously, weapons raised, but Elena held up a hand.
Wait.
We don't know what we're dealing with yet. We need to approach carefully. This could be a trap, or it could be a message. As the team advanced toward the ship, they noticed something even more unsettling. The glyphs around the monoliths were shifting, rearranging themselves as if responding to their presence. The patterns were no longer static. They were actively changing, becoming more complex, more urgent. It was as though the planet itself was communicating, reacting to the crew's intrusion. Elena's mind raced as she examined the ship's structure. This ship is part of a network, she said, piecing together the clues. The monoliths, the signal, the ship, this is all connected. They were waiting for someone to find them. But why? Tarek scowled. This doesn't feel like a coincidence. Whatever's waiting for us in that ship, I have a bad feeling about this. Before anyone could respond, the ground trembled again, this time more violently. The ship's surface began to hum, and one of the monoliths detached from its base, floating toward the team. It moved with unnatural precision, guided by some unseen force. Elena's heart raced. We've activated something. Get back to the ship, now. The team turned and sprinted back toward the Hope, the hum of the monolith growing louder as the planet seemed to wake up fully. The ancient ship loomed behind them, its dark, hollow interior beckoning with the promise of secrets long forgotten. But as they reached the safety of the Hope, they realized they had uncovered something far more dangerous than they had imagined. The planet wasn't just the home of a lost civilization.
It was a key.
And what it opened could either save humanity or lead to its destruction. The descent to the alien planet was a journey marked by tension, uncertainty, and awe. Commander Tarek, seated at the helm of the Hope, kept his gaze fixed on the planet below. The ship's sensors detected no signs of life, at least not in the way humanity understood it, but the energy readings were impossible to ignore. The planet was ancient, scarred, and seemingly dead, yet the monoliths on the surface pulsed with strange energy, beckoning them forward. As they broke through the atmosphere, Elena Voss stood at the observation window, her eyes locked on the ground below. The surface was a labyrinth of jagged rocks, deep canyons, and sprawling plains, an uninviting landscape, but one that held secrets buried deep within it. It's like nothing I've ever seen, Elena said, her voice steady, but tinged with wonder. This world, it's ancient. And those monoliths, they're not like anything we've encountered. Tarek's voice crackled through her earpiece. Let's stay focused, Elena. We're not here for a sightseeing tour. Get what we need and get out. We don't know what kind of dangers we're dealing with. She nodded, but even Tarek's commanding tone couldn't silence the unease creeping into her mind. As they touched down near the largest of the monoliths, the planet seemed to come alive. A low hum filled the air, reverberating through their bones. The monoliths, arranged in a perfect circle, glowed faintly, their energy pulsing in sync with the rise and fall of the planet's mysterious atmosphere. Everyone, stay sharp, Elena instructed as she led the team out of the ship. Their boots crunched on the rough, rocky terrain, the air thick with the scent of ancient dust and ionized energy. The monoliths towered above them, seemingly beckoning them to come closer. Each one was covered in intricate, shifting symbols, alien glyphs that changed every time they looked away. This is a message, Elena muttered, staring at the symbols. These weren't just left here. They were placed deliberately. The team gathered around one of the monoliths, the pulse of energy growing stronger. Elena reached out to touch its surface, her fingers tingling as if the stone itself were alive. The moment her hand made contact, the entire structure shuddered, and a wave of energy rippled outward, knocking them all to the ground. Get back, Tarek shouted, pulling Elena away just in time. The ground beneath them trembled, and a low, resonating sound echoed across the plain. For a moment, it felt as if the entire planet was groaning in response to their presence. But then, the energy settled, and the monoliths stopped glowing. Everything fell silent. eerily silent. "What the hell is that?" Lieutenant Rios asked, his voice filled with concern. He had his weapon raised, scanning the horizon for any signs of danger. Elena stood up, dusting herself off, her mind racing. I think we just triggered something. The ship, whatever it is, it's awake. These monoliths are some kind of activation mechanism." Tarek frowned, his gaze shifting from Elena to the sky. "You're saying that ship we've been tracking, it's connected to these monoliths?" Elena nodded. "It's the only explanation. These glyphs, the energy signatures, they're all linked. This planet wasn't just a colony. It was the site of something much larger, a network, perhaps." Just as she finished speaking, a massive shape loomed in the distance, a shadow blocking out the stars. Elena's heart skipped a beat. It was too large to be anything they had encountered before. A low hum rose from the ship, and suddenly, its massive form became visible against the sky, a colossal, ancient warship, its hull marked by age and decay, but still radiating with an undeniable power. "Elena, do you see that?" Tarek's voice was barely above a whisper. The ship hung in the sky, casting a long, ominous shadow over the planet. It was unlike anything human technology had produced, its surface dotted with strange, shifting glyphs, much like the monoliths. The sheer size of the craft was enough to make the Hope look like an insect by comparison. "We need to get back to the Hope," Tarek said, his voice growing more urgent. "Whatever that thing is, it's waking up." But before they could retreat, the monoliths flared to life once more, their pulses synchronized with the ship above. The ground shook beneath them, and the energy in the air grew thick with a sense of impending doom. From above, the warship emitted a piercing, high-pitched sound, a signal or a call, something that vibrated through the very fabric of the planet. And then, for the first time, the crew saw movement within the ship. Energy fields crackled to life, and massive doors began to open. Something ancient, something powerful, was waiting for them. And whether they were ready or not, they had just unlocked the doorway to an even greater mystery. The true story of this forgotten civilization was about to unfold, and humanity was at its center. "Everyone, back to the ship," Tarek shouted. "We've stirred the hornet's nest. Let's not stick around to find out what comes next." As they sprinted toward the Hope, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they had just set in motion a series of events far beyond their control. They had awoken something. And now, there was no turning back. The warship above them loomed large, its dormant power now igniting with terrifying energy. And somewhere, deep within its vast halls, someone was watching, waiting, ready to see how the humans would handle the legacy they had just uncovered. Back aboard the Hope, tension ran high as the crew scrambled to make sense of what they had just witnessed. The colossal alien ship, now eerily silent in the distance, lingered in their minds like a haunting specter. The planet beneath them trembled, as if reacting to their departure, while the mysterious monoliths continued their glowing, rhythmic pulsation. The planet, once thought to be a barren wasteland, was clearly far from empty. The question was, what had they awoken, and what did it want with them? Dr. Elena Voss paced the command center, reviewing the data from their scans and the signal they had traced to the monoliths. The glyphs had continued to evolve after they had left the surface, slowly transmitting more complex sequences of information to the Hope. But they weren't yet decoded. There was too much unknown, too much hidden in the ancient language. However, one thing had become painfully clear. This civilization was not just dormant. It was preparing for something. "Elena," Commander Tarek's voice broke through her thoughts. He stood at the door of the command center, his brow furrowed in concern. "I think you need to see this." Elena followed him to the observation deck. The view was a mix of awe and dread. The alien ship now hovered in the sky above the planet, its surface glowing with an unsettling intensity. From the ship's core, tendrils of energy began to reach toward the monoliths, connecting them in an intricate web of light. It was as if the ship was communicating with the planet itself. "Look," Tarek pointed to the monitors, which displayed a sudden spike in energy readings. "The ship is powering up. It's coming online." Elena's heart skipped a beat. They had unwittingly triggered something, but what was it?
And why?
The ship's reactivation wasn't just a technological anomaly. It was the beginning of something far larger. The Hope had barely scratched the surface of what lay beneath the planet's crust, and now they were facing the consequences. "We've got to stop this," Elena said, her voice tinged with urgency. "If that ship powers up completely, it might be more than we can handle. We need to find a way to shut it down before it fully awakens." Tarek nodded, his face grim. "I agree. But we have no idea what kind of force we're dealing with here. We need to learn more about this civilization, what they were capable of, and why they left the ship behind." The crew sprang into action. A small team was assembled, led by Elena and Tarek, to return to the surface. Their goal was clear: infiltrate the ancient warship, find the control systems, and attempt to understand the purpose behind its reactivation. As they suited up and prepared to leave the Hope, Elena's mind raced. This was a gamble. They had no idea what awaited them inside that ship, whether it was a dormant weapon or a treasure trove of knowledge. But they had no choice. If they didn't act now, the entire mission, and perhaps the future of humanity, could be in jeopardy. The descent back to the planet's surface was uneventful, the team's ship cutting through the atmosphere with a controlled burn. But as they neared the landing zone, the energy from the ship intensified. The ground below them seemed to ripple, as though reality itself was being twisted. The ship was not just powering up, it was establishing a connection with the planet's core, drawing power from an energy source that none of them could yet comprehend. Elena's pulse quickened. As their craft touched down, the ground beneath them shook violently, and the planet seemed to roar in response. The monoliths stood taller now, their energy fields growing stronger, more pronounced. "Let's move," Tarek ordered, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. "Stay sharp, and don't stray too far from the ship." They made their way toward the massive structure, the once dormant warship now brimming with energy. The doors to the ship's hull opened before them, seemingly of their own accord, welcoming them inside. The air was thick with a strange, metallic scent, and the walls of the ship glowed with an unsettling blue light. The interior was vast, stretching out in every direction, with corridors that seemed to twist and expand beyond logical dimensions. "This place, it's alive," Elena murmured, awe and fear blending in her voice. They continued down the long, winding halls, their footsteps echoing eerily. The deeper they ventured, the more they felt an unsettling presence, something watching them from the shadows. The ship's walls were adorned with the same glyphs they had seen on the planet's surface, but they now seemed to shift and change before their eyes. The language was not static. It was evolving in real time. "Are we getting closer?" Tarek asked, his hand gripping the rifle slung across his back. Elena nodded. "We should be." "I'm detecting a power source up ahead. It's incredibly concentrated." As they rounded a corner, the crew came upon a vast central chamber, its ceiling stretching up into darkness. In the center of the room stood a massive console, its surface glowing with an ethereal light. Around it were various alien symbols and technology that was both beautiful and terrifying in its complexity. At the base of the console was an ancient control system, familiar yet utterly foreign. Suddenly, a low hum filled the room, and the console activated. A series of holographic images flickered to life, depicting scenes of an ancient civilization, one that had risen to great power and fallen into ruin. The images were accompanied by the same glyphs, now decipherable, revealing the civilization's history. They had once been a race of conquerors, spreading across the stars. But something had gone terribly wrong. A cataclysmic event had shattered their empire, and the ship, this very warship, had been left behind, dormant, as a last-ditch effort to preserve their legacy. "This ship was designed to protect something," Elena whispered, her voice tinged with both awe and horror. "And now it's awakening because it senses us. It's trying to fulfill its purpose." Before they could react, the ship's energy level spiked, and the walls around them pulsed with a violent surge. The console emitted a final, booming sound, and a deep, resonant voice filled the room, one that was neither human nor alien, but somehow both. You are the inheritors? The words echoed in their minds, and the ship began to stir in earnest. It was no longer dormant. It was alive, and it was ready to unleash the legacy of its creators. The words echoed through the chamber like a thunderclap, reverberating in Elena's chest. You are the inheritors. The voice, a deep, booming presence that seemed to vibrate not just the air but the very bones of those who heard it, seemed to pull the crew into an unspoken understanding. It wasn't just a message. It was a command. The warship, ancient and forgotten for millennia, had now chosen them. The holographic images flickered with rapid intensity, showing flashes of a once proud civilization that spanned galaxies. Their advanced technology, their conquests, their rise to power, all of it had been leading up to this moment. But what had happened to them? The final images were stark and haunting, showing their civilization's sudden, catastrophic collapse. The ship had been left behind as a final safeguard, a weapon with a singular, grim purpose. Elena stepped closer to the console, her hand reaching out instinctively toward the alien interface, which pulsed with energy, responding to her presence. A surge of information flooded her mind, an overwhelming rush of memories and knowledge that were not her own. Images, sounds, and emotions, all belonging to a species long gone, bombarded her consciousness. She gasped, steadying herself. "It's all connected," she whispered, barely able to keep up with the flood of alien data. "This ship, it's not just a weapon. It's a record of everything they were, everything they did. They left it for us." Tarek looked around uneasily. "What do they want from us, Elena? What do you mean, we?" Before she could respond, the ship seemed to hum louder, and a blinding flash of light shot out from the center of the room, enveloping them all in its pure brilliance. For a moment, everything went white. When the light faded, the crew found themselves standing in a massive chamber, far larger than anything they had encountered so far in the ship. The walls of the room stretched up impossibly high, covered in strange crystalline formations that pulsed with faint, shifting colors. A massive, dormant structure loomed at the center, an ancient, blackened obelisk surrounded by a web of glowing energy. The air felt thick with power. "What is this?" Commander Tarek muttered, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. "Another weapon?" "No," Elena replied softly, her gaze fixed on the obelisk. "This is something else. This is their legacy." At that moment, the voice echoed once again, its tone growing more insistent. "The inheritors must choose. Will you embrace what is yours, or will you be consumed by it?" The words seemed to vibrate in the very air around them, filling the room with a palpable sense of urgency. A deep chill crept up Elena's spine. She realized with a sinking feeling that they weren't just here to explore. They had been chosen for something far greater and far more dangerous. "The inheritors," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's us. It's humanity. The ship, it's waiting for us to decide. If we want to inherit their power, their legacy, or destroy ourselves with it." Tarek stepped forward, his face hardening. "I don't like this. This is too much for anyone to handle. This power, it could be more than we can control." "We have no choice," Elena said, her voice filled with a quiet resolve. "If we turn back now, we're not just abandoning this legacy. We're condemning the human race. We'll never be able to go back to Earth. But if we claim what's here, we could ensure humanity's survival. We could ascend." A voice cut through her thoughts. One of her team members, Lieutenant Rios, spoke up with a mixture of dread and excitement. "What if we're not supposed to inherit it? What if the fall of their civilization was a warning?" "Then we'll make our own choice," Elena said, turning back toward the obelisk. "But if we do nothing, we risk everything." With a deep breath, Elena reached forward, touching the surface of the obelisk. It hummed, sending a shockwave of energy through her body. For a moment, the air seemed to freeze. Then, the room suddenly brightened as the ship's systems came alive around them. Massive portals slid open in the walls, revealing rows of dormant technology, weapons, and ships beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. The voice once again filled the room, but this time it was different, softer, almost welcoming. The inheritors have arrived. The time has come to fulfill your purpose. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet as a massive rumble surged through the ship. The entire structure shook with violent force, and the crew had to steady themselves. The energy in the room flared, and the holographic images of the alien civilization resumed, showing their final moments, their defeat at the hands of an enemy even more powerful than they had imagined. Their mistake had been one of pride, believing they could control the forces they unleashed. Elena's heart raced. She could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. They had awoken something that could either save humanity or doom them all. The decision was clear now.
We need to leave.
Now, Tarek said, his voice low and urgent. We've seen enough. We've activated something, but we don't know how to control it. We need to get back to the Hope. But as they turned to leave, the doors to the chamber slammed shut. The energy within the ship pulsed, intensifying with each passing moment. The walls began to close in, and the once breathable air turned thick with heat. They were trapped. The voice echoed once more, its tone now dark and foreboding. The inheritors cannot escape. You must choose. The legacy of the stars, or the legacy of destruction. The decision had been made for them. Humanity had inherited the power of the ancient race, but now they had to face the consequences. The ship was no longer just a tool. It was a sentient, malevolent force, and it wasn't about to let its new masters leave without embracing their role.